let's actually go to the Big 12 for just a moment. BYU, Iowa State, Arizona State, Kansas State. This is portal madness season, but has it been portal sadness season for them? Like, what's going on there? Why are they not super high in the transfer portal rankings? Like, we're talking about teams that I just mentioned that we expect to compete for. And if you gave me the odds, I would take one of those 4 teams winning this thing. Why are they not in the portal at all, man?
Yeah, the word that I would use to describe these teams, the transfer portal, the acronym I would use, the letters I would use are B, A, and D, and that's bad. It has not been pretty at all for Kansas State, Arizona State, Iowa State, and BYU. If you ask right now 24/7, hey, where do those teams lie? BYU 16, Iowa State 15, Arizona State 14, Kansas State 13. That's not good, except for the fact that it kind of is. Because what we don't often consider in the conversation of the transfer portal is even coaches like Deion Sanders doesn't want to take 50 guys. Those coaches, they don't want to take 50 guys. How do I know that? Because Deion just took 25 in this last transfer portal class. He has showcased it is a better move to take fewer players out of the transfer portal. Last year's final rankings, BYU 15th, Iowa State 16th, Kansas State 13th. Those were the teams at the top of your conference. Why were they at the top of your conference despite the fact they did not recruit well in the transfer portal last year? Continuity. That word is so much more important than overturn. You do not want a roster that is going to have to replace 30 guys. You do not want a roster that needs to desperately replace 20 guys even. Instead, you want to be in Kansas State spot or BYU spot. We say we only need the transfer portal to plug a couple of holes. We're missing this, and this that graduated or transferred out themselves. Other than that, we are okay. We're taking a sophomore, a junior that we've grown up in Provo, that we've grown up in Tempe or in Ames or in Manhattan, and we're going to make them great football players. It is no coincidence the top 4 or 5 programs in the Big 12 are at the bottom of the transfer portal rankings because they're doing it the old-fashioned way in college football, the Big 12 way in college football, and having great success with it. They do not want a major shift in their roster from the transfer portal because they do not need one. They instead need continuity and consistency. If you want to be good, you want to be very low in the Big 12 rankings when it comes to the transfer portal.
It definitely is going to be a case study because we see what teams like Texas Tech are doing, and certainly their odds have jumped way up because of the talent they brought in, but you wonder how quickly can that gel. I just saw a tweet before we got on here that in the last 11 days, Miami has taken 7 transfers in the spring window. Drake, of a team that won 10 games last year. In Mario's, 4th year at this point? I think 4th year. 4th year, a team that won 10 games, a team that plays in the ACC, which is very top-heavy, right? We'd say that Clemson and Miami are the favorites to win. At least that's what Vegas says again this year. And so it's very interesting to me to see teams absolutely try and build through the portal and load up that way. And this is not a shot at Florida State's culture or Texas Tech's culture or Miami's culture or anything like that. But when I do think about the programs listed, and I think about BYU, Arizona State under Dillingham, obviously Satake at BYU, Campbell at Iowa State, when I think about some of these programs that you've mentioned, Kansas State too, all of them, I do think about that culture being different. I do think about the culture in BYU. I do think about the culture in Manhattan being different. And obviously, Dilly's the youngest out of those 4. Yeah. But you think about those are mainstays, right? And Dilly even being younger, I mean, he's an alum. Like that is his dream job. Like that's not a typical third-year head coach by any means. But I do think about the culture being so vital. And the reason I think, and this is maybe me getting on a soapbox at this point, the reason I think those teams consistently play harder, show better effort, win games they're not supposed to, compete in games that they're not supposed to, end up literally being a blown call or a missed call away in a playoff game from winning. The reason I think they do that, there's talent there, right? Let's not pretend that Sam Levitt's not the best quarterback in the Big 12 or that Scadaboo wasn't the best. There's talent for sure. Retzlaff and all these quarterbacks that are at these 4 different programs are all really good. But the way that these teams fight and continue to just go blow for blow. I do think that culture is so important at these 4 programs that you mentioned specifically. Now, I'm not saying that every other Big 12 team has bad culture or that every other Big 12 team just that, but I do think that it's different specifically at these 4. You sent me these 4 names, not me. I didn't come up with BYU, Iowa State, Arizona State, Kansas State. But if you asked me, TJ, which 4 programs in the Big 12 do you think have the best culture? This would have been easily the 4 that I would have picked. And that's not a shot at anyone else. I think the world of other coaches, Scott Frost going back to UCF, Rich Rod going to West Virginia, other coaches in this conference, I think a lot of. I do think that culture matters. And I'm not saying that portal guys can't bring culture. That's not my point at all. But I do think it goes hand in hand with what you're talking about.
No doubt. And look, if you're a team, a fan, a coach that says, well, shoot, bad news for us. We're top 5 in the conference and transfer portal rankings. If you're Texas Tech, that must mean we suck and don't have continuity. Not necessarily. It's a case-by-case basis. In the case of these 4, they are fine. They need not change a thing. But in 2024, again, we asked 24/7, your top 5 in the transfer portal in the Big 12, you see universities like Colorado, who had a great season last year. You see TCU, who had a bounce-back year, 9 wins. And you see Arizona State finished 4th in the conference last season in transfer portal rankings. They took that class to become Big 12 champions, and like you said, a call away from winning a college football playoff game. Just because your school is recruiting well in the portal, Texas Tech, doesn't mean you're going to be bad. Ohio State did this. They helped revamp their school. LSU, a couple of years back. We see schools that are going to revamp out of the portal because they have to. And when we consider what the Big 12 is doing right now, those 4 teams at the bottom, they didn't need the portal. And a few of these teams at the top, like Texas Tech, they do. Houston, they do. They need as many guys as they can get because either there's pressure on the head coach, they need to win now, something's got to change. Even Colorado still needs to refine its roster. I don't mind them being pretty high up. I don't mind West Virginia having 51 portal commits because they kind of need it. But Kansas State, Arizona State, Iowa State, BYU, they don't. And that's the goal for everyone in the league, to get to that point, to get to that spot where you feel completely comfortable. And that's why those schools right now are the top of their game.
Yeah, it's less about, to me, it's less about the portal being a bad thing and more about how can I keep the wheel going? How can I keep all the cogs in the wheel going at the same pace? And the more newness that you add to it, the more of a ramp up time you need. And we see that all the time. I mean, think about LSU. They like to call, not to dump on other programs or whatever, they call Brian Kelly the portal king, or Lane Kiffin LSU hasn't won an opening game in 5 years. And they start out in the other Death Valley this year in Clemson. Yeah. And it is a case of, well, you got a team that was built a lot out of the portal with LSU, and then a guy who, it is polar opposites, isn't it, of LSU and Clemson. And, I think about Ole Miss in Florida. Florida didn't take a lot of guys out of the portal this year. They had a nice finish to their year. They've recruited pretty well. It pains me to have to give them credit, but they're not desperate for the portal, whereas other programs feel desperate to use the portal. Hey, we got to load up here. You look at the programs that have built things well, the Ohio States, the Georgias, the Texases. They don't go out and load up in the portal. What do? They use 2 or 3 portal spots for absolute difference makers. Caleb Banks going to Ohio State. Texas pulling in the best tight end out there from Cal. I think that's obviously the model that a lot of people want to get to, where they rely on what they've got in house, and you can use you can cherry pick the portal, right? Hey, we'll use all our portal budget on the 3 elite guys that we want that plug some holes that we're kind of thin at, instead of, hey, man, we need like 30 guys. Now, New coaches, UCF, West Virginia, teams that are desperate to win, right? Florida State went back to the portal all the time. Well, they won 2 games last year. They're desperate to win, right? You needed to get rid of a lot of that roster. I do think it says a lot of good about the programs that we mentioned.
I think so, too.
Doesn't say to me that there's bad for the others, but I do think that Texas Tech is going to be a case study this year. We're either going to say, man, they struck gold, or we saw this coming. So